Hi Joe, welcome to A Sharp.
Thank you.
I'm here to interview you, obviously. But because you're actually one of the engineers slash producers of A Sharp Recording Studio here in Riverwood, I wanted to find out what kind of got you started in production and engineering.
So for me, it all kind of kicked off in high school. I got involved in an entertainment industries class. Started doing front of house work for a few bands just around the Shire. Went on to JMC Academy and sort of learnt audio engineering and production, just kind of learnt my trade there. And just got involved in the music scene that way, met some bands, and it just snowballs. You get into some studios and you just sort of fall into it, I think.
Yeah. So in the sense of like getting into studios, what are kind of some of the studios that you've worked in previously?
I've been around to quite a few. Rec Studios on Castle Ray Street there in the city, 301, studio in the Shire called Origami for quite a while as well. Used to do a few sessions there. So yeah, just kind of I bounced around a fair bit before I landed at A Sharp, and yeah, it's kind of taken off from there.
Yeah. And so what has been the appeal of A Sharp for you kind of sticking it here?
I think it's a number of things. It'd be hard to narrow it down to one. I think I'm big on gear. I'm a bit of a gear nerd, so I like the selection of outboard gear. You know, two LA2As and a couple of 1176s. The mic selection's fantastic. I'm an SSL fiend as well, so the AWS is kind of a big deal for me as well. And the space. It's a beautifully treated room, and it feels homely as well. I never feel like I'm at work when I'm in here, which is kind of nice. So yeah.
Pretty cool. And given that you're kind of into the SSL, has SSL recordings and things that have been recorded with the SSL been part of your early influences in production and engineering?
Yeah, very much so. I think that's kind of what stemmed it. I mean, I'm a big fan of like the early 90s hip hop, and that was kind of the soundtrack of my teenage years, if you like, the whole hip hop thing. The old SSL 4000G console was kind of instrumental to a lot of that.
Yeah.
So I think that's what kickstarted it, and then as I got into, audio and started learning my trade, it stopped being that and started just being the sound of the SSL.
Okay.
The EQs and the transparency of it. I can do whatever I want. It's like a blank sketch pad every time.
Right, and that's important to you with engineering and production, or is that the only thing that's important?
No, not at all. I mean, it's all the gear and all that sort of thing. They're all just tools. I mean, we've got a number of different flavors. So we've got Neve preamps, we've got SSL, we've got Avalon. For me, it's all about having flavors, things that I can just reach over and just almost at the push of a button, just have a flavor. I like options, you know what I mean? I don't like to be too limited. And that's the same when I'm recording a band as well. I like to try and organize a session so that everything's kind of, mic'd up before we even think about doing it, if you like, you know what I mean? I'll have a little electric guitar set up in an acoustic rig or something like that, so the band can just walk up and start jamming, because it feels organic. That's sort of how it should be for me.
So that's kind of like a general rule for you when you're doing a recording.
Yeah, it should feel good. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily like having too much structure, I guess, in a recording situation. I like just someone at the back of the room just thinks, oh, this might sound kind of cool on a piano, and it's like, yeah, it's done. It's good to go. Just walk up and play it. Yeah, it should. For me, that's how it should be. Very much so. Yeah.
And so that kind of comes down in the sense of having the physical recording studio set up, also using the equipment in tangent with that, and mixing and recording is the same kind of deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of everything that I do here, the studio is set up in a way that allows me to work like that, and allows me to be very fluid and things like that in how I work, which is a lot of fun for me.
So in that, do you have like a favourite genre of music that you like to produce, or that is like just so good?
It's kind of that's a fairly evolving thing. I like working with anything with a strong rhythm to it, or a strong like sense of groove. Like as I say, I grew up on hip hop back in the day, so it's a lot of syncopation and it's all very drum heavy. So any bands that I get a chance to work with that have that same kind of feel, are doing interesting rhythms and things like that, excite me a little bit more. But I mean, I'm also a bit of a sucker for anything kind of Brit rock, that whole like gritty guitars and dirtier drums and things like that. That's kind of where I'm most at home, but a bit of everything. It's just
and
music
do you
that
do a bit
excites
of
me.
that? Like, do you do a bit of the writing of the drums and that kind of stuff? Or?
Yeah, I try and get involved in a lot of that sort of thing. Not as far as going to call myself a songwriter or anything like that, but programming drums and that kind of thing, that all comes down to probably the whole hip hop influence
Yeah.
again. I like getting involved in that kind of thing as much as I can. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think is probably like the biggest challenge about being a producer and engineer?
Biggest challenge, probably staying fresh for me. I don't like getting stuck in habits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You find yourself as an engineer, you sort of lean on the same signal chains and things like that more often than not. You know, you find a vocal chain that works, and just the next session, you just go to it again. You know, I'd sort of always try and keep myself fresh, and that's kind of a challenge in its own way for me. Just going like, what else? Like, what am I going to do differently today to just keep progressing as an engineer, keep learning gear and that kind of thing. But it's a fun challenge, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, it could be worse.
Yeah, well, probably could be worse. So is that kind of how you've started kind of collecting more instruments and gear and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, because it all goes back to having flavors and options. Like I was saying before, it's you know, I like toying with different combinations of sounds. You know what I mean? Like I'll do a project where, you know, I'll sort of be using a lot of the Neve flavors that we have here. You know, I'll do all my guitars through 1073s or something like that, and then the next session I'll, you know, conscious choice. It's like I'm gonna do something else, just not so much for the sake of it, but to stay fresh. You know? So I don't want to sort of box myself into anything if I don't have to.
Yeah.
So yeah.